The wind drifts quietly across endless frozen plains, where ancient fires flicker against the dark. Shadows of hunters move between stone shelters, wrapped in fur, breathing clouds of mist into the icy night. Survival is fragile, yet enduring. Welcome, dear listener. Tonight let us wander back in time together, gently, as if we are stepping into a dream. Before we begin, if you'd like to help this little corner of calm grow, you may tap the like or subscribe button, only if it feels right for you. I'd also love to know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. There's something cozy about imagining our small community scattered across the world, all drifting toward rest at the same moment. So, settle in. Perhaps dim the lights, let the fan hum softly, or nestle under the blankets. Feel your body sink a little deeper into comfort as your mind quiets with the rhythm of breath. Imagine yourself tens of thousands of years ago in the heart of Europe. The world does not look like the one you know today. Thick sheets of ice stretch across the land, carving valleys and covering entire regions. Snow lies heavy on the ground, not for weeks but for months and years. It was the time we call the Ice Age, when survival was not just about food or safety, but about enduring the bitter cold that could strip life away in minutes. For the people who lived during the Stone Age, cold was not just uncomfortable, it was constant, unforgiving, and dangerous. Winters were not measured in weeks, but in endless seasons where freezing winds swept through forests and plains. These winds carried with them an almost invisible threat: frostbite, sickness, and exhaustion. When the temperature dropped suddenly, the body could only endure so much before its strength gave way. The winds themselves were sharp, slicing through whatever rough clothing people wore. You must picture these winds not as the chilly breezes of a modern winter, but as howling, relentless gales that rattled trees, tore across open grasslands, and crept into even the smallest cracks of a shelter. People huddled close together, but the air outside never truly rested. It was alive, roaring, and in many ways merciless. And yet, the Stone Age communities endured it. They learned to read the weather in ways we might find surprising. The change of clouds, the smell of the air, or the movement of animals often gave hints of a storm. A sudden silence in the forest, or the way birds vanished into the distance, was enough to warn them that freezing winds were approaching. In those moments, people prepared themselves by seeking refuge, in caves, in crude shelters, or in the warmth of each other's company. The plunging temperatures shaped everything about their existence. A night that turned too cold could mean the loss of life by morning. Food froze solid, fires struggled against the gusts, and even tools became brittle in the icy grip of winter. But the human body, though fragile, was also adaptable. People learned to conserve energy, moving less when the cold was most severe, and saving their strength for the tasks that mattered most: gathering wood, tending fire, and finding food. What might surprise you is that these people did not always see the cold as just an enemy. In their world of belief and mystery, the cold itself could carry a spirit. The winds howling at night may have seemed like voices, reminders of unseen powers that controlled the land. To them, these plunging temperatures were more than weather. They were forces to be respected, perhaps even feared. And yet, even in the face of this endless winter, humanity held on. Step by step, they discovered ways to bend the cold to their survival. The freezing winds, though fierce, became teachers, showing where not to build, when to move, and how to live. Without learning to endure those plunging temperatures, humankind may never have advanced, may never have spread, and may never have become what we are today. The story of survival begins here, in the icy breath of Europe's Ice Age. And as we move deeper, we will see how people found warmth, shelter, and hope in a world that seemed determined to freeze them out of existence. When we think of the Ice Age, we often imagine endless snow, but in truth, the most powerful force shaping Stone Age Europe was not just the cold winds, but the glaciers themselves. These vast rivers of ice did not simply rest in the mountains. They moved, crept forward, and reshaped entire landscapes. Slowly, over centuries, they carved valleys, flattened plains, and changed the face of the continent in ways that would last long after the people who lived there were gone. To the Stone Age communities, this movement was both a mystery and a challenge. A glacier was not like the snow that fell and melted with the seasons. It was a giant, a wall of ice that advanced steadily, crushing forests beneath it, swallowing rivers, and leaving behind bare, scarred earth. Imagine waking to find the land you once hunted upon now locked under a sheet of solid ice. The animals would vanish, the plants would die, and the people would be forced to move on. This constant shifting of terrain meant that no place was ever truly permanent. Villages could not last for generations in one spot, because the land itself kept changing. Sometimes a river would be blocked by ice, creating a new lake. Sometimes fertile ground would be buried, and people had to search for new soil where roots and berries might still grow. It was a world in motion, even though the people themselves could not always see that slow and relentless movement. What must it have felt like to live beside these immense ice walls, to hear the distant groaning of glaciers as they cracked, split and ground against the stone? Perhaps it was terrifying, a reminder that the earth itself was alive and could shift without warning. And yet, for people of that age, this was normal. They accepted a world where the land itself was unstable, where pathways disappeared, and where the horizon might change from year to year. The expanding glaciers also meant that migration was not simply a choice, but a necessity. Communities moved southward or to lower valleys, always chasing warmth, food, and open land. Each journey carried risk, but it also carried discovery. New hunting grounds, new rivers, and sometimes even new encounters with other groups of humans awaited those willing to follow the shifting earth. The glaciers, destructive as they were, also gave something back. As they ground against the mountains, they left behind new landscapes, valleys rich in stone and flint, essential for tools and weapons. They carved basins where fresh water pooled, giving rise to lakes that could support life for centuries. So while glaciers closed one door, they quietly opened another. Survival meant learning to adapt not just to the cold, but to the ever-changing shape of the land itself. And in this way, the story of humanity is tied to the movement of the ice. Each step forward of a glacier pushed people to new lands. Each retreat opened new opportunities. The very struggles of the Stone Age, to find food, to build shelter, to endure, were written upon this shifting terrain. It is almost strange to think that what was, to them, a threat and a challenge, is to us a source of wonder. Today, when we see the great valleys of Europe, the rivers that cut through the land, the fertile plains, we are looking at the fingerprints of those ancient glaciers. For the people of the Stone Age, however, they were simply reminders that nothing stayed the same, and that survival meant moving, adapting, and learning to live in a land that never stood still. For Stone Age people, the cold was not only in the air or in the ice around them, it was something that lived inside the body. The freezing winds and plunging temperatures pressed against flesh and bone, testing the limits of human endurance. In such a world, survival was not only about fire or shelter, it was about how much a body could bear before it gave way to the chill. The first sign was always the skin. Cold air stung it, leaving it red, raw, and numb. Exposed fingers and toes quickly lost their feeling, a dangerous signal that frostbite was near. In the quiet of winter nights, people might have noticed how their hands trembled even when they willed them to be still. Small injuries, a cut from a flint knife or a scratch from brambles became dangerous, as the cold slowed healing and infection could take hold. The lungs too carried the mark of the Ice Age. Breathing in the sharp air could feel like inhaling knives. Each breath was shallow, as deep ones burned the chest. Long hunts in the snow drained energy faster than in warmer months, and those who were weak or ill found themselves gasping, unable to keep pace with their companions. Even children, full of energy, learned quickly that running in the freezing cold left them exhausted in moments. But perhaps the most punishing effect of the cold was hunger. The human body burns more energy to keep warm, and in the Stone Age food was never guaranteed. The long winters demanded more from every person, yet provided less. Weight fell from the body as fat reserves dwindled. Thinness, while normal in that time, could become dangerous when paired with frost and wind. A body without fat was a body without insulation, and without insulation the cold crept in mercilessly. Sleep, which should have been a refuge, was often uneasy. The body cooled as people drifted into rest, and without enough warmth from fire, furs, or companions, waking in the night shivering was common. In the worst moments the cold brought confusion. People might grow strangely calm, even sleepy, just before hypothermia set in. To the Stone Age mind, this must have seemed like a spirit calling someone away in the night. Quiet, invisible, but deadly. And yet, even with these dangers, the human body showed remarkable resilience. Over generations, people adapted. Some communities developed stockier builds, shorter limbs and broader chests, physical shapes better suited to hold warmth. These were not choices, but the quiet work of nature, shaping humanity to endure in climates where survival seemed impossible. Still, daily life demanded constant awareness of the body's limits. Hunters knew they had to keep moving to generate heat, even when tired. Families understood the importance of huddling together, sharing warmth skin to skin. Fire was not just a tool, but a necessity, because without its glow, the human body alone could not stand long against the Ice Age nights. It is easy, from the warmth of modern homes, to forget what cold can truly do. But for Stone Age people, its toll was carved into every scar, every cough, every lost finger or toe. Cold was not simply a season, it was an enemy that stalked them day and night, waiting for the smallest weakness. And in fighting this enemy, humanity grew stronger, tougher, and more resourceful. The physical toll of the cold was real, harsh, and often tragic. Yet it was also the great test, one that shaped the bodies and spirits of our ancestors, ensuring that when warmth finally returned, humankind was ready to take its next steps forward. When the hunt ended, and the great animal lay still, the story of survival was only halfway complete. For Stone Age people, the meat filled their stomachs, but it was the hide, the skin and fur of the animal, that offered protection against the cold. Without hides, the freezing winds and plunging temperatures of the Ice Age would have been unbearable. The hunt was not just about food, it was about clothing, shelter, and the very warmth that allowed people to live another day. Imagine a group returning to their camp after bringing down a reindeer or bison. They carried heavy loads of meat, but alongside it came the thick hides. Around the fire, the process of survival continued. The hides were stretched, scraped, and cleaned. It was slow, careful work. The smell of animal fat mixed with the smoke of the fire, while stone tools scraped away the flesh and sinew. Every step was important, because a poorly prepared hide could stiffen, rot, or fail to keep out the cold. The skin of the animal was more than a simple covering. It was a barrier against frostbite, a layer that trapped warmth close to the body. Even before people learned to sew, hides were wrapped around shoulders and fastened with bone pins or strips of sinew. In the howling winter winds, a person dressed in fur was wrapped not only in warmth, but in the life of the animal itself. The larger the animal, the greater the gift. A mammoth hide, heavy and thick, could become a floor covering inside a shelter, or even be used to create walls that blocked the cold. Reindeer skins, soft and insulating, were prized for bedding. The fur trapped heat so effectively that sleeping on hides was sometimes the difference between surviving a night and never waking again. But hides were not only practical, they also carried meaning. To wear the skin of a powerful animal was to carry part of its strength. A hunter wrapped in wolf fur might have felt protected by the spirit of the wolf. A cloak of bear skin was not just clothing, it was a reminder of courage, endurance, and the bond between humans and the wild. In this way, the hides connected people to the natural world, turning survival into something spiritual. The work of preparing hides was often shared. While hunters risked the chase, those at camp, women, elders, even children, learned the delicate skill of softening, stretching, and shaping hides into usable form. Smoke curing was one of the simplest methods, hanging hides over a fire so that the smoke preserved them, keeping insects and rot away. The process required patience, but the reward was worth it. A well-prepared hide could last through many seasons, a constant shield against the cold. It is easy to imagine how essential this practice was. Without modern fabrics, without wool sweaters or blankets, hides were the only reliable way to endure the freezing nights. Each successful hunt meant not only food in the belly, but warmth on the body and comfort in the shelter. In the silent language of survival, hides were as valuable as fire. So, after the hunt, when the tribe gathered around the fire and worked patiently on the hides, they were not merely processing the remains of an animal. They were weaving another chance at life. Every scrape of the stone tool, every stretch of skin over a frame, was part of a ritual as important as the hunt itself. The animal gave its flesh to feed them, and its hide to keep them alive through the relentless winter. And so, survival in the Ice Age was always more than the chase. It was the full use of what nature provided. Meat for strength, bones for tools, and hides for warmth. This cycle, repeated countless times, was what allowed our ancestors to endure in a world of endless cold. Once the hides were cleaned and softened, the work of turning them into something wearable began. In the world of the Stone Age, clothing was not made for beauty or fashion, it was made for survival. Every stitch was a barrier against the cold, every strip of sinew that held skins together was a small defence against the endless winter. At first, clothing was little more than wraps, hides draped across the body and fastened with thongs of leather. But with time, people discovered that by piercing holes in the skins and joining them together, they could create garments that fit closer to the body, holding in warmth far more effectively. It was a quiet revolution, one that changed the way humans faced the cold. Their tools were simple, but clever. From the bones of animals they shaped needles, small sharp slivers drilled with a hole to carry thread. The thread itself often came from sinew, the strong fibres taken from muscles and tendons. Flexible, durable, and able to shrink tight as it dried, sinew thread was nature's perfect sewing material. With these, the people of the Ice Age stitched hides together, forming tunics, leggings, and cloaks. Imagine sitting in the dim glow of a firelit cave, the wind howling outside, while someone worked patiently with needle and sinew. Each puncture of the hide was followed by a pull of the thread, slow and steady. The sound of scraping stone tools had given way to this softer rhythm, a rhythm that meant warmth and safety. Around them, others might be repairing old garments, patching holes, or adding layers of fur to make clothes thicker. In such a setting, the act of sewing was as essential as the act of hunting. The garments they made were practical. Cloaks with fur on the inside trapped heat. Boots made from hide kept feet dry in snow. Leggings allowed hunters to move through the icy forests without freezing. Even hoods and caps were created, recognizing that warmth lost from the head could endanger the whole body. The knowledge was passed from one generation to the next, a tradition as vital as any hunting skill. Sometimes, decoration found its way into the garments as well. Shells, beads, or bits of bone might be sewn into the seams, turning survival, clothing into something more personal, more meaningful. These details remind us that Stone Age people were not only struggling to live, they were also expressing identity, belonging and pride, even in the harshest of conditions. And what must it have felt like to wear such clothing? To wrap oneself in fur-lined garments stitched with care, and to step out into the snow knowing that the cold could not cut through as easily. It was not luxury, it was life. A well-made cloak could mean the difference between surviving a journey or falling to the frost. Each piece of clothing was a small shield crafted by human hands against a world that was vast and unforgiving. We often think of invention as grand moments in history: fire, the wheel, the bow. But perhaps the quiet art of sewing was just as important. With needle and sinew, Stone Age people extended their lives, carried warmth with them, and freed themselves to hunt, to travel, and to endure. These simple garments were, in truth, survival technology, every bit as vital as stone tools or fire. So, in the long story of humanity's fight against the cold, sewing was not a minor skill. It was one of the small, ingenious steps that carried our ancestors forward, stitch by stitch, through the frozen centuries of the Ice Age. For the people of the Stone Age, surviving the bitter nights was as much about where they slept as what they wore. Even the warmest garment could not fully protect against the icy ground and the frozen air of European winters. That is where animal furs came into their own, not just as clothing, but as bedding and insulation, a soft life-saving layer between humans and the cold. Caves, huts, and makeshift shelters provided some protection, but floors remained cold and hard. Sleeping directly on stone or frozen earth would sap warmth from the body, making even short nights dangerous. By spreading thick furs beneath and around themselves, people created an insulating barrier, trapping body heat and creating a small, warmer micro-environment. A floor covered with reindeer, mammoth, or bison hides could mean the difference between shivering through the night and waking refreshed, ready to hunt, gather, or travel. Furs were layered carefully, Soft underfurs offered comfort and warmth next to the skin, while coarser outer hides helped block drafts and retain heat. Sometimes, smaller scraps were used as pillows, propping the head to reduce contact with the cold surface. The ingenuity lay in understanding how the natural qualities of each animal's hide could be combined to create an effective sleeping system, almost like the earliest form of insulation. Huddling together further enhanced the warmth. Families slept close, their bodies pressed into the furs, sharing the heat that each human body generated. This communal sleeping arrangement was not just practical, it fostered closeness and cooperation, reminding us that survival was as much social as it was physical. Sharing furs and beds created bonds and ensured that the youngest, oldest, or weakest members could endure the night. The process of preparing furs for bedding was meticulous. Scraping, softening, and drying the hides ensured they would not rot, stiffen, or attract insects. Smoke curing over a fire could preserve hides for months, while repeated use gradually softened them, making them more comfortable with each season. The care invested in bedding mirrored the care taken with clothing. Both were tools for survival, crafted with skill and attention. Furs also served as insulation for the shelters themselves. Draped over walls or hanging from ceilings, they blocked gusts of wind and reduced drafts. In some caves, people even used layers of hides to create partitions, keeping animals away or dividing sleeping areas. Every piece of hide had multiple purposes: warmth, comfort, protection, and sometimes even symbolic value. A prized wolf pelt or bear skin might be kept carefully for special use, signalling skill, bravery, or status within the group. Sleeping on furs was more than just physical protection. It offered a psychological comfort as well. The softness, the smell, the slight cushion of warmth, all reminded people of security, of survival, of human ingenuity in the face of a harsh, frozen world. Nights were still long and cold, but wrapped in layers of hides, humans could rest, dream, and prepare for the challenges of the next day. By understanding the value of furs as bedding and insulation, Stone Age people mastered an essential part of survival. The ice and snow were still relentless, but the combination of fire, clothing, and bedding created a sanctuary, however temporary, in the vast frozen wilderness. In these quiet, careful routines, we see the earliest evidence of humans shaping their environment to endure, a testament to resilience, creativity, and the intimate knowledge of nature that carried our ancestors through the Ice Age. In the relentless cold of Ice Age Europe, warmth was life. Stone Age people had no stoves, no matches, no modern conveniences. Yet somehow, they discovered one of humanity's greatest tools: fire. The ability to create fire with stone sparks was not simply a matter of comfort, it was survival itself. Imagine a dark, freezing cave at night. Snow drifts outside, the wind howls like a chorus of spirits, and the ground beneath is hard and cold. In the flickering shadows, a small group gathers around a pile of tinder. They carry flint stones and pieces of pyrite, smooth and hard, chosen carefully for their ability to produce sparks. Every strike, the flash of light, the tiny shower of sparks, feels magical. But it is no magic. It is knowledge honed by observation, patience, and countless attempts. Creating fire was delicate work. A strike in the wrong place, on the wrong angle, and the sparks vanished uselessly. But with care, a single spark could catch dry grass, moss, or bark, the tinder beginning to smoulder. Then came the slow nurturing, blowing gently, adding small twigs, coaxing the ember into a tiny flame. One by one, the flames grew, casting a golden circle of warmth in the darkness, and for those gathered, it was nothing short of a miracle. Fire was more than warmth, it was a shield. It kept wild animals at bay, driving off wolves or other predators that prowled the snow-covered forests. It offered comfort, a psychological barrier against the fearsome cold and the eerie silence of winter nights. People felt safer near the glow, their hearts steadying against the wind that seemed to reach even inside their shelters. The creation of fire also marked a significant step in human ingenuity. Knowing how to start a flame from stone sparks required planning. Dry tinder had to be gathered during the day, kept safe from moisture, and stored for nights when survival depended on it. Stone tools were shaped with care, and knowledge passed from one generation to the next, ensuring that the precious skill of fire-making endured. We might forget how remarkable this was. In a world where a single freezing night could end life, controlling fire meant controlling destiny. A small flame allowed people to cook meat, making it easier to digest and safer to eat. It dried furs and hides, preserving clothing and bedding. It allowed longer hunts, since people could return at night knowing they could rekindle warmth. Fire turned the hostile wilderness into a more manageable environment, and yet fire was fragile. A sudden gust of wind could extinguish a flame, a stray spark could ignite disaster. Each fire was carefully maintained, fed, and protected. The dance of firelight in caves and shelters became both ritual and routine. It symbolized human determination, the refusal to surrender to cold, the ability to take the raw elements of the earth and transform them into a life-saving tool. Through sparks from stone, humans carved out a space for warmth, safety, and survival. It was an intimate personal mastery over nature, a knowledge that combined observation, skill, and patience. Every night a fire burned was a triumph, every flame a quiet victory against the endless winter. The story of fire begins here, in these small glowing sparks. And from this first mastery, humanity would go on to use fire not just to survive, but to shape the world, turning the impossible cold of Ice Age Europe into a challenge that could be met with ingenuity and courage. Once the fire was alive, its benefits went far beyond mere warmth. For Stone Age people, fire became the heart of survival, transforming raw sustenance into nourishment that could sustain them through harsh winters. Cooking food and smoking meat were not luxuries. They were essential techniques that extended life, preserved resources, and even shaped the human body over generations. Imagine a hunter returning from a successful expedition, carrying a deer or reindeer across the snow. The animal's meat is vital for energy, but in the cold, raw meat alone might not be enough. By placing it over the fire, the flesh could be cooked, making it easier to chew and digest. Cooking broke down tough fibres and killed dangerous bacteria, a hidden form of protection against illness. In the flickering firelight, families would gather around, turning pieces of meat slowly, inhaling the smoky aroma that promised warmth, energy, and survival. But cooking was only part of the story. The winter months were long and food scarce. Stone Age people quickly discovered that fire could be used to preserve meat for the days when hunting was impossible. Smoking meat over low, steady flames drew out moisture, slowing decay and keeping the food edible for weeks. Sometimes, entire strips of meat were hung from the ceiling of caves, thick smoke curling around them, filling the space with a pungent, earthy aroma. The smell may have been strong, even unpleasant by modern standards, but to a hunter in the Ice Age, it signalled life, security, and foresight. Smoking meat required patience and skill. Too much heat could burn it, too little, and the preservation would fail. People learned to control the fire, adjusting the placement of coals and logs, keeping the smoke consistent. It was an intimate knowledge of both the elements and the food itself. The fire became a partner in survival, not merely a tool. It offered warmth, light, protection, and the quiet assurance that nourishment could last. These techniques also shaped social life. Around the fire, groups gathered to share cooked meals, teaching younger generations how to prepare and preserve meat. Storytelling, instruction, and cultural knowledge were transmitted alongside practical skills. Every meal was an opportunity to reinforce survival strategies, to learn from elders, and to bond through shared effort. Cooking and smoking also changed the human body in subtle ways. Cooked food is easier to digest, allowing more energy to be extracted, supporting longer hunts and stronger bodies. Over thousands of years, this shift likely contributed to human evolution, supporting brain development and the endurance required to thrive in such harsh climates. What may have seemed like simple fire management was, in fact, a profound adaptation to one of the most challenging environments on Earth. Even the act of preparing food near the fire carried psychological comfort. In the unrelenting cold, watching meat sizzle or seeing smoke curl upward gave reassurance. Warmth was present, sustenance was secured, and the night, though long and icy, could be endured. Fire and food together created a rhythm of life, a dependable routine that helped people navigate the uncertainty of Ice Age Europe. Through cooking and smoking, fire became more than a source of warmth. It became a lifeline. Every flame fed bodies, preserved resources, and strengthened communities. In these quiet rituals of preparation, humans learned not just to survive, but to thrive, even when the world outside was frozen, hostile, and unpredictable. In the frozen expanse of Ice Age Europe, warmth was not the only gift of fire. Beyond the comfort it offered, fire became a guardian, a vigilant shield against the ever-present dangers that lurked in the dark. Wolves, cave lions, and other predators roamed the snowy forests and plains, hunting for food in the same harsh conditions as humans. For Stone Age people, fire was the most reliable defense against these unseen threats. Imagine a small group huddled in a cave or lean-to. The wind whistles outside, rattling trees and snow-laden branches. Somewhere in the shadows, a pair of eyes glints, reflecting the faint moonlight. The howls of distant wolves echo across the ice, a constant reminder that the world is full of hunger. Yet, inside the circle of firelight, people feel a fragile sense of safety. The flames do more than illuminate, they push back the darkness and the danger it hides. Predators learned quickly to fear humans and their fire. Animals sensitive to the scent of smoke or the flickering light often avoided campsites, even when hunger gnawed at them. Fire created a boundary, invisible but real, marking a space where humans had control. Within this boundary, families could sleep, prepare food, and tend to the young without constant terror. A fire was, in effect, an invisible wall, a living barrier that separated life from death. Maintaining this protective flame required attention and skill. People knew that a fire that dwindled too low could be fatal. Sparks had to be nurtured, wood kept dry, and embers fanned into flame when needed. Fire was not merely a tool, it was a companion and a sentry. The glow of the flames became a signal, not just to humans, but to the surrounding wilderness. This place is claimed, and danger is warned away. The psychological impact of fire as a shield cannot be underestimated. The constant cold, the long nights, and the presence of predators could create fear and anxiety. Yet, sitting near a roaring fire, humans felt a measure of control. The crackle of burning wood became a comforting rhythm, a reminder that the group could endure, defend, and survive. Even children, who might have been frightened of shadows and noises outside, could find reassurance in the fire's glow. Fire also allowed humans to actively manage risk. Meat could be cooked safely without leaving it exposed, furs could be dried before becoming bedding, and night watches could be organised more confidently. In a world where a single misstep could be fatal, fire gave people both practical defence and the quiet confidence to carry on with their lives. Over time, this mastery over fire contributed to human resilience. Predators were no longer the absolute threat they once were, and people could expand their range, explore new territories, and establish more permanent shelters. Fire was not a guarantee of safety, but it was a powerful equaliser, allowing humans to assert control in a natural world that was otherwise dominated by larger, faster, and more dangerous animals. In the story of Ice Age survival, fire was both warmth and warrior, comfort and shield. Each flame that flickered against the darkness represented not only ingenuity but life itself. By learning to create, maintain, and use fire effectively, Stone Age humans carved out a space where they could live, even amid the relentless cold and the silent threat of predators stalking outside. Long before the invention of modern houses, Stone Age people found refuge in the simplest and most natural of shelters: caves. These rocky sanctuaries, carved by millennia of geological forces, offered protection from the freezing winds, heavy snowfall, and predators that prowled the Ice Age landscape. Yet, a cave in its raw state was not immediately comfortable or safe. It required ingenuity, observation, and careful adaptation to become a true living space. Imagine approaching a cave in the fading light of day. The entrance is dark and imposing, the cold air pouring out like a warning. Inside, the floor is uneven, the walls jagged, and the space damp. For our ancestors, survival demanded more than merely stepping inside. They began by examining the cave carefully, choosing spots for sleeping, cooking, and storing food. Areas near the entrance were often avoided at night, as they were more exposed to wind and wandering predators. The back of the cave, however, offered insulation and shelter from the harsh elements outside. To make the cave livable, people adapted its features. Rocks were moved to create flat surfaces, and small depressions in the ground were filled with leaves, grass or fur to form rudimentary bedding. Water seeping through cracks was diverted or avoided, ensuring that sleeping areas remained dry. Smoke from fires was carefully managed, placed near the centre but away from sleeping spots, to provide warmth without choking those inside. Every adjustment, every careful placement of materials was a small triumph against the relentless cold. Caves also became a place of organisation and community. Spaces were divided according to activity, cooking fires in one corner, sleeping in another, tools stored along the walls, and hides hung for insulation. This created a rhythm of daily life, even in the harshest environments. Living spaces were not chaotic. They were thoughtfully arranged to maximise safety, warmth, and efficiency. Decorative elements sometimes appeared as well. Ancient cave paintings, figures of animals, symbols, and abstract designs suggest that these spaces were more than mere shelters. They were places where humans expressed culture, identity, and perhaps even spirituality. These images, drawn on stone walls, may have been a way to connect with the animals they hunted, or to mark territories within the shelter. In this way, caves became both practical and symbolic spaces, bridging survival and human creativity. The strategic use of caves also reflected a deep understanding of natural forces. Entrances were positioned to avoid the worst winds, fire smoke was vented naturally through openings, and bedding was kept above damp floors. Such knowledge, passed down through generations, ensured that even in extreme cold, humans could rest safely, recover energy, and face the next day's challenges. Transforming a cave into a living space was not a one-time task, but a continuous process. People maintained their bedding, adjusted fires, repaired damage from storms, and added new tools and hides as seasons changed. Each action was a testament to human adaptability, turning a raw, icy hollow into a warm, functional home. In the story of Ice Age survival, caves were more than stone shelters. They were carefully shaped environments reflecting human skill, observation, and resilience. By learning to transform natural spaces into livable homes, Stone Age people created a foundation for one of the most fundamental human achievements, turning the world around them into a space that could sustain life. While caves offered natural protection, not every family had access to one. For many Stone Age communities, survival meant building shelters from scratch, simple, ingenious huts made from what the land provided. Bone, wood, and hide became the essential materials, woven together into structures that could withstand the harsh winds, snow, and predators of Ice Age Europe. Imagine walking across a frozen plain and seeing a small group working together, shaping a home from the bare landscape. Long branches and sturdy wooden poles were anchored into the ground to form a basic frame. Curved bones from large animals like mammoths or reindeer were often used to reinforce these structures, creating arches or supports that added strength and stability. Over this skeletal framework, animal hides were stretched tightly, forming walls and roofs that kept out wind and snow. These huts were simple in appearance, but sophisticated in function. The hides acted as insulation, trapping warmth inside while keeping cold air at bay. Gaps were minimised, and heavier furs could be layered on top during the coldest nights. Each design reflected careful observation. The placement of the entrance, the slope of the roof, and the choice of materials all contributed to making the hut both sturdy and livable. Inside, the space was often divided into functional areas. Fires were placed centrally or near the back to provide heat, while avoiding smoke inhalation. Bedding, made from soft furs, lined the floor. Tools and hunting equipment were stored along the walls, keeping the living area organised and ready for the next hunt. Even in a small hut, there was a clear understanding of order, ensuring that daily life could continue with minimal stress. Construction was a community effort. Everyone contributed. Hunters brought bones and large branches, women and elders prepared hides, and children helped with smaller tasks, learning the essential skills of building for survival. These moments were not just practical. They reinforced bonds, taught knowledge, and created a shared sense of accomplishment. Every hut was a tangible proof of cooperation and ingenuity. Interestingly, these structures were also adaptable. Some could be dismantled and moved as communities followed migrating herds or sought more favourable climates. Others were reinforced seasonally, adding extra layers of hide or more, insulation to withstand the dead of winter. This flexibility reflected the deep understanding Stone Age people had of their environment and their ability to manipulate it for survival. Even the act of using bone in construction held symbolic weight. Bones were the remnants of hunted animals repurposed to protect human life. There was a poetic continuity in this. The same creature that provided meat and furs now formed the frame of a home, connecting life, death, and survival in a tangible way. Huts of bone, wood, and hide remind us that ingenuity does not require modern tools or technology. Survival demanded observation, creativity, and the clever use of available resources. Through these simple homes, humans created warmth, security, and a space to thrive, even when the world outside was frozen and relentless. In the story of Stone Age survival, huts were more than shelters. They were the product of human intelligence, collaboration, and respect for nature's materials, a testament to the enduring capacity of humans to adapt and endure. While caves and huts offered protection, Stone Age people sometimes faced landscapes where no natural shelter existed, and resources for constructing wooden huts were scarce. In these extreme situations, snow and ice themselves became the building materials for temporary shelters, a clever adaptation that turned the environment's harshness into a survival tool. Imagine a hunter caught far from home, the wind cutting sharply across a frozen plain, snow piling high around him, every step crunches underfoot, and the cold bites through even thick furs. Survival requires ingenuity. By digging into deep snowdrifts or piling snow strategically, he can create a small cavity, a space shielded from wind and insulated by the snow itself. Inside, temperatures, though still frigid, are far more manageable than the bitter air outside. These snow shelters were surprisingly effective. Snow, when packed densely, traps air between its crystals. This trapped air acts as an insulator, holding warmth from human bodies and reducing exposure to freezing winds. Even a small shelter, carefully shaped, could provide enough heat to survive long nights or dangerous storms. People discovered that a low entrance, often positioned away from the wind, further enhanced warmth, while the interior space could be shaped to accommodate several occupants huddling together. The construction process required both skill and speed. Snow had to be compacted carefully to prevent collapse. Hollowing out the interior created a domed space, minimizing contact with the cold ground. The walls and ceiling of ice or packed snow were not mere barriers. They were active participants in survival, reflecting the understanding people had of how materials interact with temperature, wind, and human warmth. Temporary snow shelters were also strategic. Hunters or small groups on the move could create them quickly, offering short-term refuge while following migrating herds or escaping severe storms. They were lightweight in the sense that they required no transported materials. The landscape itself provided everything needed. In this way, snow became both enemy and ally, presenting danger on open plains while offering protection when used wisely. Life inside these shelters was intimate and quiet. The cold outside created a sense of enclosure, encouraging people to huddle closely, share body warmth, and conserve energy. Fires could be small, carefully managed, or sometimes omitted entirely, relying on insulation from the snow itself. Sleeping, resting, and planning the next day's hunt all took place in these temporary havens, demonstrating that even in the harshest environments, humans could engineer solutions to survive. There is also a subtle beauty in this practice. Using snow to create shelter reflects the remarkable adaptability of humans, turning a relentless frozen landscape into a tool for protection. It was a silent testament to observation, patience, and the ability to work with nature rather than fight it directly. The Ice Age may have been unforgiving, but humans learned to read the terrain, the snow, and the wind, transforming threats into survival opportunities. In the story of Stone Age Europe, snow shelters represent more than temporary refuge. They reveal a mindset shaped by necessity, creativity, and resilience. By using snow and ice intelligently, our ancestors were able to survive even when the world offered no obvious protection, a quiet, ingenious victory against one of the harshest climates humanity has ever faced. In the frozen expanse of Ice Age Europe, survival depended on food, and food often meant hunting massive, powerful creatures. Mammoths, reindeer, and bison roamed the plains and forests, providing not only meat but hides, bones, and sinew, materials essential for clothing, tools, and shelter. Yet hunting these giants was not simply a matter of chasing prey. It was a careful, dangerous art, requiring skill, planning, and an intimate understanding of the animals themselves. Imagine a small group of hunters observing a herd of mammoths from the edge of a snowy forest. The massive beasts, with their long, curved tusks and shaggy coats, move slowly but carry incredible strength. A single misstep could be fatal. Hunters had to watch patiently, learning patterns of movement, understanding where the animals grazed, drank, or rested. Every sound, scent, and shadow mattered. The difference between a successful hunt and disaster. Stone Age people developed strategies that were as ingenious as they were practical. Large groups might work together to drive herds toward natural traps, narrow ravines, frozen rivers, or steep inclines. There, the animals could be contained or slowed, giving hunters an advantage. Weapons were simple but effective, spears tipped with flint or bone, long thrusting tools for close-range attacks, and wooden throwing sticks to harass and distract. It was a delicate combination of patience, timing, and teamwork. Reindeer, though smaller than mammoths, required equal care. Their speed and agility made them difficult to catch. Hunters often used knowledge of terrain to their advantage, driving the animals along familiar paths or using snowdrifts to funnel them into areas where they could be more easily captured. The hunt demanded endurance. Trackers followed herds for miles in freezing weather, relying on keen eyesight, sharp hearing, and intuition developed over years of observation. The hunt was not without risk. A wounded mammoth could charge with terrifying speed, tusks swinging, crushing everything in its path. Hunters faced frostbite, exhaustion, and the threat of predators attracted by the struggle. Yet despite the danger, the rewards were immense. A single successful kill could provide meat for weeks, hides for clothing and shelter, and bones for tools. The energy invested in the hunt was repaid many times over in resources critical for survival. Beyond the practical, these hunts carried social and cultural significance. They reinforced cooperation, taught younger members essential skills, and created shared rituals around preparation, tracking, and butchering. Each hunt was a lesson in observation, patience, and respect for the animals that sustained life. Mammoths and reindeer were not merely prey. They were partners in a delicate balance between survival and environment. Stone Age hunters also demonstrated remarkable ingenuity in using every part of the animal. Meat fed the body, hides protected against the cold, bones were crafted into tools and weapons, and sinew became thread for sewing. The hunt was an integrated system, a careful orchestration of knowledge, skill, and survival instinct. In the harsh, frozen world of Ice Age Europe, hunting large animals was more than a necessity. It was a testament to human intelligence, endurance, and the ability to work with nature rather than against it. Through these hunts, our ancestors secured not only sustenance, but the means to thrive, demonstrating resilience and ingenuity that would define humanity for millennia. In the harsh winters of Ice Age Europe, hunting provided food, but the question of how to make it last was equally important. Meat, fresh from a mammoth, reindeer, or other large game, could only sustain a family for a few days if eaten immediately. To survive the long months when hunting was impossible, Stone Age people relied on the age-old techniques of drying and smoking meat, practices born from observation, necessity, and careful experimentation. Imagine a group returning from a successful hunt, the wind biting at their skin and the snow crunching underfoot. The air smells of cold and smoke, and the hunters carefully hang strips of meat over low smouldering fires. They use smoke not only to add flavour but as a preservative, keeping insects and bacteria at bay. The smoke curls and drifts, creating a veil of protection around the precious food, signalling that sustenance has been secured for days to come. Drying was another essential method. Thin slices of meat were stretched on wooden racks or laid on flat rocks exposed to the sun and wind. In this frigid climate, dehydration was slow but effective. Wind and low humidity naturally removed moisture from the meat, inhibiting the growth of harmful microorganisms. Often, smoking and drying were combined. Meat hung near a smoke source while air currents circulated, creating the perfect environment for long-term preservation. The process required patience and attention. Too close to the fire, and the meat could char. Too far, and it might spoil. Hunters monitored the strips carefully, turning and adjusting them as needed. This was meticulous work, but it was essential. Each piece of meat preserved meant another day survived during the harshest months, another buffer against famine or failed hunts. These techniques also fostered knowledge sharing within communities. Elders taught younger members which woods or plant materials produced the best smoke, which cuts of meat dried fastest, and how to store preserved meat safely. Over generations, this wisdom became part of the collective survival toolkit, passed down alongside lessons of tracking, hunting, and shelter building. Preserved meat had more than practical value. It allowed for planning, giving communities the ability to travel, trade, or store surplus for future lean times. It also provided a sense of security and mental relief in a world dominated by uncertainty. Knowing that a pile of smoked reindeer or dried mammoth meat was waiting in the cave offered reassurance against the unpredictability of the frozen wilderness outside. The ingenuity of these preservation methods demonstrates how humans adapted to extreme climates. Stone Age people understood natural processes, heat, smoke, airflow, and moisture, and turned them into life-saving techniques. They transformed raw meat, vulnerable to spoilage, into a dependable resource that could sustain them through weeks or months of scarcity. In essence, drying and smoking meat was an act of foresight and intelligence. It bridged the immediate triumph of a successful hunt with the long-term demands of survival, turning fleeting success into enduring stability. In the story of Ice Age Europe, preserved meat was not just food. It was resilience made tangible, a quiet testament to human patience, skill, and ingenuity. While hunting large animals provided the bulk of sustenance, Stone Age people knew that survival depended on more than just meat. Berries, roots, tubers, and other edible plants were essential supplements, sources of vitamins, minerals, and calories that could mean the difference between health and weakness, life and death. Gathering these resources was an equally critical part of daily life, requiring careful knowledge of the land, the seasons, and the plants themselves. Imagine walking through a snowy forest in early spring or late summer. The snow may be melting, revealing patches of hardy greenery. Berries peek out from under shrubs, and roots and tubers lie just beneath the soil. Each plant is carefully inspected. Some are edible, others toxic. This knowledge was painstakingly learned over generations, passed from elders to children through demonstration and storytelling. Misidentifying a plant could lead to sickness, so observation and memory were as valuable as any spear or fire-starting tool. Gathering was not a haphazard task. People observed the cycles of nature, knowing which berries ripened at what time, which roots could be dug up without damaging the plant, and which leaves or shoots were safe to eat. Seasonal rhythms guided their movements, ensuring that communities could harvest these resources at the right moment. This knowledge often dictated travel, camp locations, and even the timing of migrations, linking survival directly to an intimate understanding of the environment. Berries were not only nutritious but also easy to store and transport. After gathering, they could be dried on flat stones near a fire, creating a compact, long-lasting food source. Roots and tubers, once dug up, were often stored in insulated pits or covered with leaves to protect them from frost. By combining preservation methods with careful gathering, Stone Age people ensured that even in lean months small but vital sources of nourishment were available. Gathering also shaped social life. Women, children, and elders often took the lead in foraging, walking quietly through forests and meadows, collecting plants and monitoring the landscape for subtle signs of wildlife or changes in weather. These trips were opportunities for teaching, for passing down the intricate knowledge of edible versus poisonous plants, and for reinforcing bonds within the group. While hunters brought in meat, foragers brought in life-sustaining supplements that balanced nutrition and strengthened the community. The practice of gathering demonstrated remarkable adaptability. Stone Age people did not rely solely on luck or instinct. They observed patterns, experimented, and learned from both successes and failures. Certain berries, like lingonberries or bilberries, provided vitamin C, preventing scurvy, while roots and tubers offered carbohydrates for energy. This careful balance between hunting and gathering reflected a sophisticated understanding of survival strategies, ensuring that communities could endure long winters and unpredictable food availability. Even today, we can appreciate the skill involved. Recognizing edible plants in a harsh environment requires patience, experience, and an intimate connection to the land. For our ancestors, these plants were lifelines, small, humble gifts from nature that, when gathered wisely, contributed to resilience and longevity in a world dominated by ice, wind, and frost. In the story of Ice Age survival, foraging was as vital as the hunt. Berries, roots, and edible plants were more than supplements. They were evidence of human observation, intelligence, and adaptability. Quiet tools that allowed people to thrive in one of the most challenging climates in history. In the frozen world of Ice Age Europe, survival was often a matter of warmth, not just from fire or clothing, but from the bodies of fellow humans. Stone Age communities understood the quiet power of cooperation, and one of the simplest yet most effective strategies was sleeping together to conserve body heat. What may seem instinctual today was, for our ancestors, a carefully observed survival tactic. Imagine a family settling down in a cave or hut after a long, exhausting day of hunting and gathering. The snow presses against the walls outside, the wind whistles through cracks in the shelter, and the cold threatens to seep into even the thickest furs. In this environment, huddling together was more than comfort, it was essential. By sleeping in close proximity, bodies shared warmth, reducing heat loss to the frozen air and the cold ground beneath them. This practice required careful arrangement. Adults, children, and elders were positioned strategically, often with the strongest or most experienced individuals forming a barrier against drafts and exposure. Babies were nestled in the centre, protected from cold and danger. Sleeping together was not only practical, but also created an intimate sense of security, a small, warm microcosm in the midst of a hostile, icy world. The benefits were profound. In temperatures far below freezing, a group huddling together could survive where an isolated individual might perish. Heat from shared body mass reduced the energy each person needed to stay alive, conserving precious calories for hunting, gathering, and daily survival tasks. In essence, communal sleeping was an early form of energy management, an adaptation that turned human closeness into a literal lifeline. There was also a social dimension to this practice. Sleeping together strengthened bonds and reinforced cooperation, critical traits in a world where teamwork could mean the difference between life and death. Knowledge was shared quietly in these moments. Elders could instruct the young about survival strategies, tracking, or tool use while nestled together in safety. In this way, sleeping arrangements became both practical and educational, fostering resilience within the community. Even the arrangement of bedding and furs played a role. Soft hides were layered on the floor, sometimes stacked in tiers, with each layer contributing to insulation. Furs were draped over sleeping bodies or around the edges of the group to block drafts. Every element of the sleeping space reflected careful observation and planning, a quiet but essential science of staying warm in extreme conditions. Psychologically, sleeping together offered reassurance. The presence of others, the rhythmic sound of breathing, and the warmth of shared bodies helped reduce fear and stress, which could otherwise weaken immune responses or sap energy. In the long, dark nights of Ice Age winters, this intimacy provided comfort that went beyond physical survival, nurturing a sense of belonging and safety in an unpredictable world. Sleeping together to conserve heat was a strategy born of necessity, observation, and collaboration. It demonstrates the subtle ingenuity of Stone Age people, understanding that survival was not only about tools, clothing, or fire, but about human connection. In the story of Ice Age Europe, communal warmth was both a shield and a bond, a quiet testament to the social intelligence that allowed humans to endure some of the harshest conditions on the planet. In the frozen expanses of Ice Age Europe, survival was rarely a solitary endeavour. The cold, the predators, and the scarcity of food demanded teamwork. Stone Age people quickly learned that cooperation, especially in hunting and sharing resources, was as vital as clothing, fire, or shelter. Through collective effort, communities could achieve feats that individuals alone could not, turning danger into opportunity. Imagine a hunting party preparing to track a herd of reindeer. Alone, a single hunter might struggle to bring down even a modest animal. risking injury or exhaustion. But together, the group could coordinate movements, anticipate the herd's patterns, and create a strategy to corral or corner the prey. Each person had a role. Some distracted the animals, others drove them toward traps, and skilled hunters delivered the critical strike. It was a carefully orchestrated effort, requiring communication, trust, and a deep understanding of both prey and terrain. Success in hunting large game like mammoths or reindeer was not just a triumph of skill, it was a triumph of community. Once the animal was taken down, the task of butchering, transporting, and preserving meat became a shared responsibility. Everyone participated, from cutting and drying meat to preparing hides for clothing and bedding. Cooperation ensured that every part of the animal was used, nothing went to waste, and that the entire group benefited. Resource sharing was equally important. Food, furs, and tools were often distributed among the community to balance scarcity and prevent individual hardship. A family that had hunted successfully might provide for those who had not, ensuring the survival of the weakest members, the elderly, the young, and the injured. This practice reinforced social bonds and mutual reliance, creating a network of interdependence that strengthened the group as a whole. Cooperative strategies extended beyond hunting and food. Shared knowledge of tracking, foraging, firemaking, or shelter construction was passed along to younger members through observation and instruction. These lessons were as crucial as the food itself, equipping the next generation with the skills necessary to survive and thrive. In this sense, cooperation was both practical and educational, weaving survival knowledge into the fabric of daily life. The psychological benefits of cooperation were profound. Working together reduced stress and fear, allowing individuals to focus on strategy rather than panic. In a world dominated by unpredictable weather, dangerous animals, and scarce resources, trust in others was a stabilizing force. Each successful hunt or preserved cache of food reinforced confidence in the group and a shared sense of security. This collective approach demonstrates remarkable foresight and intelligence. Stone Age people recognized that survival was not only about individual strength or cunning, but about collaboration, organization, and empathy. By combining their efforts, they turned the harsh, icy landscape from an insurmountable challenge into a manageable environment where humans could endure and even flourish. In the story of Ice Age survival, cooperative hunting and resource sharing reveal the social sophistication of early humans. Beyond tools, fire, and shelter, it was the ability to work together, share burdens, and pass down knowledge that truly allowed communities to withstand the relentless cold, predators, and scarcity, a quiet triumph of human ingenuity and connection. In the unforgiving winters of Ice Age Europe, survival was a collective responsibility. The cold spared no one, but the most vulnerable, children, the elderly, and those injured or ill, faced the greatest danger. Stone Age communities instinctively understood this, developing strategies to protect the weak, ensuring that the survival of the group depended on the care and attention given to every member. Imagine a family huddled in a cave while a storm rages outside. Tiny hands press against warm fur, small bodies nestled close to adults sharing body heat in a quiet protective circle. These children were at the highest risk from frostbite, exhaustion, or illness, and adults knew that their survival required vigilance, patience, and foresight. Every sleeping arrangement, every movement near the fire was planned with the most fragile members in mind. Protection extended beyond warmth. Children and the weak were carefully shielded from danger during hunts and food preparation. While adults ventured into forests or across frozen plains to track large game, the vulnerable remained safely behind, under the watchful eyes of those remaining at camp. Fires were tended meticulously, and food was shared to ensure that everyone, especially those unable to contribute physically, received adequate nutrition. Survival was a shared endeavour, and every member's well-being mattered. Even mobility was adapted to protect the weak. Communities often travelled in groups that could support slower members, using sleds or carrying children when snow became too deep or terrain too treacherous. In emergencies, leaders made strategic decisions about travel, hunting, and shelter placement, always weighing the safety of the most vulnerable against the needs of the group. These choices reflect a profound understanding of human interdependence and the balance between risk and survival. Social structures evolved around these protective instincts. Children learned through observation and guided experience, gradually acquiring skills needed for independent survival. Elders and caregivers became repositories of knowledge, teaching lessons in fire-making, foraging and tracking, while simultaneously offering physical protection. This careful intergenerational transmission ensured that survival strategies were reinforced and passed down, strengthening the community's resilience over time. The act of protecting the weak also fostered empathy and cooperation, qualities essential for enduring extreme environments. By valuing every individual, Stone Age people created bonds that extended beyond immediate survival. Shared responsibility meant that no one was left behind, and the group could function as a cohesive unit, navigating a hostile climate with collective intelligence and care. In essence, protecting children and the weak was a cornerstone of Ice Age survival. It was not merely an instinctual response, but a practical strategy intertwined with social organisation, resource allocation, and knowledge sharing. The health and safety of each member reinforced the survival of all, proving that in the cold, harsh world of prehistoric Europe, human connection and care were as vital as fire, food, and shelter. By looking after the most vulnerable, Stone Age people demonstrated a quiet but profound wisdom that endurance in a frozen world depended not just on individual strength, but on the capacity to protect, nurture, and rely upon one another. This principle, deeply rooted in human nature, ensured the continuity of life through generations, even in one of the planet's most unforgiving environments. In the frozen landscapes of Ice Age Europe, survival demanded more than instinct and courage. It required tools, simple, ingenious, and highly effective. Stone and flint tools were the backbone of daily life, shaping everything from hunting and food preparation to clothing and shelter. Though primitive in appearance, these implements were marvels of human ingenuity, enabling Stone Age people to manipulate the world around them and endure a harsh, unforgiving environment. Imagine a hunter kneeling on snow-packed ground, a slab of flint in hand, striking it with precision to create a sharp edge. That edge would become a spear tip for hunting reindeer, a knife for cutting meat, or a scraper for preparing hides. Each flake chipped away from the stone was a deliberate act of craftsmanship, producing a tool perfectly suited to its task. The ability to make and maintain these tools was a critical survival skill, passed down through observation, demonstration, and patient practice. Stone and flint were versatile. Large hand axes could split wood for fires or shape bone into needles and awls. Smaller tools, carefully shaped and honed, allowed for delicate tasks such as scraping fat from hides, preparing fibres for cordage, or carving notches in wooden frames for huts. Every tool was multifunctional, designed to maximize efficiency while conserving precious materials. In a frozen world where resources were limited, waste was not an option. The process of making these tools required deep understanding of materials. Certain types of flint produced sharper edges, while specific rocks were better suited for hammering or grinding. Stone Age people learned to select raw materials thoughtfully, often travelling long distances to gather the right rock or transporting specialised pieces back to their camps. This demonstrates not only technical skill but foresight, planning, and an early form of resource management. Tools also had profound effects on social and cultural life. Knowledge of tool making and usage was shared within the group, often with elders teaching younger members through hands-on guidance. Crafting a flint knife or awl was more than a practical task. It was an exercise in patience, attention, and mastery, building both skill and confidence. Tools became symbols of capability, independence, and the ability to contribute to the group's survival. In addition, stone and flint tools extended human capabilities. They allowed hunters to bring down larger prey, prepare meat and hides efficiently, and construct shelters and clothing that would otherwise be impossible. Each tool represented a bridge between human ingenuity and the natural world, transforming raw materials into functional, life-sustaining objects. Even in the quiet moments of daily life, these tools shaped existence. A scraper smoothing a hide, a chisel carving a wooden frame, or a flint striking sparks to light a fire. Each action was part of a carefully choreographed dance between humans and their environment. Through these implements, early humans adapted to their surroundings, gaining control over elements that might otherwise have been overwhelming. In the story of Ice Age survival, stone and flint tools were more than simple instruments. They were lifelines, extensions of human intelligence, patience, and creativity. Through careful shaping and skillful use, they allowed people to hunt, build, and protect themselves, ensuring that life could continue even in a frozen, challenging world. In the frozen landscapes of Ice Age Europe, hunting large game like mammoths, reindeer, and bison demanded more than strength and courage. Humans relied on ingenuity, and among their most essential inventions were tools crafted from bone and antler. These materials, drawn from the very animals they hunted, became extensions of human skill, transforming the natural world into instruments of survival. Imagine a hunter standing at the edge of a snow-covered plain, carefully fitting a sharpened antler point onto a wooden shaft. This spear, reinforced with bone, was light yet strong, capable of piercing thick hides and striking with precision. Every tool crafted from bone or antler reflected intimate knowledge of material properties, which parts of a skeleton were sturdy enough for leverage, which antlers could be shaped without breaking, and how to balance strength with flexibility. Bone and antler were especially suited to hunting tasks. Points, hooks, and barbs could be carved to improve the effectiveness of spears or arrows. Harpoons and fishhooks were shaped from smaller bones, enabling communities to exploit rivers, lakes, and coastal areas. Scrapers made from antler edges prepared hides for clothing and shelter, while chisels and awls carved notches or pierced materials, allowing hunters to assemble traps and frameworks with precision. The process of creating these tools was meticulous. Bones were cleaned, polished, and carefully shaped using flint or stone implements. Sometimes heat was applied to make them more malleable. The final product was not only functional but durable, capable of withstanding repeated use under harsh conditions. Stone Age people learned through experience how to maximize every resource. A single animal could provide meat, clothing, and the very tools needed to hunt again. Bone and antler tools also carried social and cultural significance. Crafting them required skill and knowledge, which were taught by elders to younger members of the group. Hunting parties often shared not only meat but also the tools and techniques that made the hunt possible. In this way, these implements became symbols of expertise and cooperation, reinforcing both survival and social cohesion. Moreover, bone and antler tools allowed hunters to tackle prey that would otherwise be inaccessible. The leverage of a bone spear point or the barbed design of an antler harpoon enhanced efficiency and safety. Communities could hunt larger animals, secure more resources, and preserve surplus for the harsh months ahead. These tools, simple as they may seem, were central to life in a frozen environment where every advantage mattered. Even the quiet daily use of these implements reveals human ingenuity. Sharpening a bone knife, testing an antler spear, or repairing a fractured tool were all acts of adaptation, lessons learned through trial, observation, and necessity. Each piece reflected the delicate balance between resourcefulness and survival, a silent testament to the intelligence and resilience of early humans. In the story of Ice Age survival, bone and antler tools were far more than instruments. They were lifelines. They connected humans to the animals they depended on, extended physical abilities, and allowed communities to endure a world defined by cold, danger, and scarcity. Through these simple yet remarkable creations, Stone Age people transformed natural materials into powerful allies, ensuring that life could continue even under the harshest conditions. In the frozen plains and forests of Ice Age Europe, hunting was not a casual endeavour. It was a matter of life and death. Winter added layers of difficulty. Deep snow, icy winds, and scarce prey made survival a daily challenge. In these conditions, spears and arrows were indispensable tools, carefully crafted to meet the demands of cold, endurance, and precision. Imagine a hunter moving silently through snow-laden terrain, eyes scanning for the telltale signs of a reindeer herd. In hand rests a spear tipped with flint or reinforced with bone, balanced perfectly for both thrusting and throwing. Nearby, a quiver of arrows lies ready, fletched for accuracy in the biting wind. These weapons were not simply extensions of muscle, they were tools of strategy, designed to conserve energy while maximizing the chance of success in hostile conditions. Winter hunting required adaptation. Spears were often longer and sturdier to allow distance from dangerous prey, while still delivering lethal force. Arrows were lighter but optimized for flight through cold, dense air. Hunters learned to adjust their techniques for snow-covered terrain, where stealth and patience were as critical as strength. Tracking animals became an intricate art, reading footprints in snow, broken branches, and subtle disturbances in the frozen environment. The tools and the knowledge of how to use them were inseparable. Communities relied heavily on these weapons during winter, when other food sources were scarce. Large game like mammoths or reindeer provided meat, fat, hides, and bones, resources vital for survival. Hunting in groups allowed for coordinated strategies, with spears and arrows employed to drive herds, isolate weaker animals, or protect hunters from charges. Precision and timing were essential. A well-placed spear or arrow could feed a family for weeks, while mistakes could be costly in both food and lives. The crafting of these tools was itself a meticulous process. Flint or bone points were carefully shaped and attached to wooden shafts with sinew, sometimes reinforced with resin or hide bindings to ensure durability in freezing temperatures. Fletching was designed to stabilize arrows, and grips were carved for comfort, even when hands were numb from cold. Each weapon reflected careful observation of both prey and environment, demonstrating human ingenuity under extreme conditions. Beyond functionality, these weapons fostered social learning and cohesion. Young hunters were taught by elders how to aim, thrust, and throw effectively, often practicing in safe conditions before joining actual hunts. Success depended not only on skill but also on cooperation, communication, and trust. Every spear thrust and arrow flight was a lesson in survival passed down through generations. Even in the silence of a snowy forest, the presence of spears and arrows signified preparation, strategy, and resilience. They were more than tools, they were lifelines, enabling humans to confront predators, endure scarcity, and harness the frozen world around them. In the harsh winters of Ice Age Europe, mastery of these weapons was a defining factor between survival and peril. In the story of Stone Age survival, spears and arrows represent the merging of intellect, observation, and craftsmanship. Through them, humans extended their reach, secured sustenance, and adapted to the relentless cold. A quiet testament to the ingenuity and determination that allowed early communities to thrive against the odds. In the frigid landscapes of Ice Age Europe, survival demanded more than tools, fire, or social cooperation. Over generations, human bodies began to exhibit subtle adaptations to withstand the extreme cold. These physical changes were slow and gradual, shaped by evolution, environment, and lifestyle, a testament to the remarkable resilience of early humans in some of the harshest conditions on Earth. One of the most notable adaptations was the way the body managed heat. Stone Age humans developed a slightly more compact build in colder regions, with shorter limbs relative to their torso. This shape reduced heat loss, conserving warmth in a world where temperatures could plummet well below freezing. Broad chests and strong musculature helped maintain core temperature, while layers of fat, especially subcutaneous fat, provided insulation against frostbite and prolonged exposure to the elements. Blood circulation and metabolism also adapted. Living in a cold environment increased the body's demand for energy, leading to a higher basal metabolic rate in some populations. This allowed individuals to generate heat more efficiently, converting food into warmth and sustaining energy through long, harsh winters. Small physiological adjustments, like narrowing extremities or a slight increase in red blood cell production, further enhanced resilience to cold and low oxygen levels in some high-altitude areas. Hair and skin changes played a critical role as well. Dense body hair offered extra insulation, while facial features such as narrower noses reduced heat loss during breathing. Skin pigmentation adapted to varying levels of sunlight, balancing the need for protection against ultraviolet rays with the necessity of producing sufficient vitamin D during short winter days. Even subtle differences in hand and foot structure helped minimize heat loss, while preserving dexterity for hunting, tool-making, and daily survival tasks. Behavior and habit also became intertwined with physical adaptation. Stone Age humans learned to conserve energy when temperatures dropped, huddling together for warmth, limiting unnecessary movement, and using furs, hides, and shelters effectively. These practices complemented natural physical changes, creating a synergy between biology and lifestyle. Over generations, the body and behavior co-evolved, each supporting the other in the relentless struggle against cold. Diet played a supportive role in these adaptations. Consuming high-fat foods such as meat, marrow, and fish provided the necessary calories to fuel a fast metabolism and maintain body heat. Seasonal hunting, preservation techniques, and resource sharing ensured that communities could meet their energy needs, reinforcing the biological adjustments that allowed humans to thrive in sub-zero environments. In the story of Ice Age survival, these physical changes reveal the quiet ingenuity of evolution. Humans were not passive victims of climate, but active participants, adapting both biologically and culturally to their surroundings. The body itself became a tool, shaped by necessity and guided by the pressures of the environment, reflecting a deep connection between survival, adaptation, and resilience. Physical adaptations for coping with the cold were subtle but profound. They ensured that early humans could endure freezing winters, traverse icy plains, and continue the cycle of life. Combined with fire, clothing, shelter, and social cooperation, these changes demonstrate the remarkable ability of humans to adjust, survive, and even flourish in a world dominated by cold, scarcity, and uncertainty. In the frozen landscapes of Ice Age Europe, survival was a constant challenge. The relentless cold, shifting terrain, and unpredictable availability of food demanded more than strength and resilience. They required ingenuity. Over generations, Stone Age humans developed new skills and inventions that transformed their daily lives, enabling them not only to endure but also to thrive in a harsh and unforgiving environment. Imagine a small group of hunters and gatherers preparing for winter. They gather around a fire, discussing the best way to improve their tools, clothing, and shelters. Each task demands creativity and precision, and over time, the accumulation of knowledge leads to remarkable innovations. Flint knapping becomes more refined, producing sharper, more durable tools. Bone and antler are shaped into specialized hunting implements. Needles are carved for sewing hides into fitted clothing. Every skill reflects careful observation of the natural world, combined with experimentation and adaptation. New skills were closely tied to survival needs. Clothing required not only sewing, but also tanning and treating hides to make them flexible, warm, and water-resistant. Shelter construction evolved from simple caves to more complex structures made of wood, bone, and hide, designed to withstand wind, snow, and freezing temperatures. Even fire-making improved, as people learned to generate sparks from flint and maintain warmth efficiently. Each innovation was a direct response to environmental challenges, demonstrating the practical intelligence of early humans. Hunting techniques also evolved alongside these inventions. The development of spears, arrows, and harpoons, often tailored for specific animals or terrains, increased hunting efficiency and safety. Knowledge of animal behavior, migration patterns, and seasonal cycles was codified into practical skills that could be taught to younger generations. Stone Age humans were not only toolmakers but strategists, combining observation, craft, and foresight in ways that ensured food security and community survival. Social learning played a crucial role in the rise of these skills. Knowledge was shared through demonstration, imitation, and guidance, with elders teaching the young through hands-on experience. Mistakes became lessons, successes became traditions. Over time, these cumulative innovations formed the foundation of cultural continuity, allowing each generation to build upon the achievements of the previous one. The transfer of skills ensured that life in the harshest environments could be sustained and even improved. In addition, creativity extended beyond practical survival. Decorations on tools, clothing, and shelters reflected aesthetic expression and cultural identity. Early humans combined functionality with artistry, producing objects that were both useful and meaningful. This synthesis of practicality and imagination strengthened social bonds and reinforced the value of ingenuity within the group. In the story of Ice Age survival, the rise of new skills and inventions highlights the extraordinary adaptability of early humans. Every sharpened tool, stitched garment, and carefully constructed shelter represents more than survival. It represents problem-solving, creativity, and the ability to transform the natural world to meet human needs. These innovations allowed communities to endure freezing temperatures, unpredictable landscapes, and scarce resources while laying the groundwork for future technological progress. The rise of skills and inventions was quiet yet transformative. It demonstrates that human intelligence is not merely reactive but proactive, shaping the environment, fostering cooperation, and ensuring continuity. In the frozen wilderness of Ice Age Europe, These innovations were lifelines, tangible proof of human resilience, adaptability, and the enduring capacity to invent solutions in the face of adversity. The story of Ice Age Europe is not only a tale of survival against extreme cold and shifting landscapes, it is also a story of human evolution, a slow, deliberate march toward modernity. Over tens of thousands of years, early humans adapted biologically, socially, and culturally, gradually transforming into the species we recognize today. These adaptations were subtle, cumulative, and deeply connected to the challenges of the environment, each step building on the last. Imagine a small Stone Age community moving through a snowy forest. Their bodies carry traces of evolutionary change, slightly shorter limbs for heat conservation, increased subcutaneous fat for insulation, and enhanced stamina to endure long hunts and migrations. These physical traits were complemented by growing intelligence and dexterity, allowing humans to make sharper tools, construct more effective shelters, and plan hunting strategies with foresight. Survival was not merely reactive, it required anticipation, collaboration, and innovation. Cultural evolution ran parallel to biological change. Humans developed language, social structures, and symbolic thinking. Cave art, totems, and rituals reflect an ability to understand abstract concepts, express hopes and fears, and convey complex ideas. These early cultural practices strengthened social cohesion, facilitated the transmission of knowledge, and ensured that valuable survival strategies were preserved across generations. Over time, the accumulation of such knowledge shaped not just immediate survival, but the trajectory of human development. Technological advancements also played a role in the path toward modern humans. Flint and bone tools became more specialized, tailored to specific tasks. Fire control improved, enhancing warmth, cooking, and protection. Clothing and shelters evolved, reflecting an understanding of materials and environmental adaptation. Each new skill or invention reinforced the others, creating a web of interdependent innovations that allowed humans to exploit environments that would otherwise have been inhospitable. Learning and cooperation were central to this evolution. Elders taught younger members the skills necessary for survival, from hunting techniques to tool-making and navigation. Group cooperation ensured safety, resource sharing, and collective problem-solving. Over generations, these social behaviors reinforced cognitive development, planning abilities, and cultural transmission, all hallmarks of modern humans. Moreover, humans became increasingly adept at observing the natural world. They tracked animal migrations, studied plant cycles, and interpreted seasonal changes. This knowledge informed hunting, foraging, and settlement patterns, creating a sophisticated understanding of ecology that supported both survival and long-term adaptation. Each observation, trial, and success contributed to a growing body of knowledge that would underpin future innovations and societal development. In the story of Ice Age survival, the gradual path toward modern humans highlights the interplay between environment, biology, and culture. Physical adaptations, technological ingenuity, and social learning all converge to shape humans capable of complex thought, coordinated action, and abstract reasoning. Survival in extreme conditions was not only a test of endurance, but also a catalyst for transformation. The journey from early Stone Age communities to fully modern humans was slow, marked by incremental changes and cumulative knowledge. It reflects resilience, intelligence, and creativity, traits that allowed humans to endure, adapt, and ultimately thrive. In the frozen world of Ice Age Europe, each generation contributed a piece of the mosaic that would become our species, leaving a legacy of innovation, cooperation, and adaptation that continues to define humanity today. In the frozen landscapes of Ice Age Europe, survival was never certain. Harsh winters, unpredictable weather, and elusive prey created a world filled with challenges. Amid these struggles, Stone Age communities sought not only practical solutions, but also spiritual ones, turning to cave art and ritual as ways to understand, influence, and perhaps even appease the forces around them. Imagine a small group huddled inside a dimly lit cave, the air thick with smoke from a flickering fire. The walls are etched with images of animals, mammoths, bison, reindeer, painted in ochre, charcoal, and mineral pigments. Each line and curve is deliberate, a representation not just of the physical form but of the hope and intention behind it. These images may have been created to honour the animals they hunted, to seek success in future hunts, or to appeal for favourable weather that would allow food to remain abundant. Cave art served as both communication and prayer. In a world where understanding natural forces was crucial, these visual expressions allowed humans to externalise their concerns, desires, and gratitude. Hunters and gatherers could focus their anxieties into tangible forms, leaving marks on stone that reflected their hopes for safety, abundance, and survival. The act of painting or engraving was itself a meditative practice, a way to cultivate attention, patience, and intention while strengthening communal bonds. Prayers and rituals often accompanied these artistic expressions. While we cannot know the exact words spoken, gestures, or chants, it is evident that these practices were deeply symbolic. Groups may have invoked luck before a hunt, asked for shelter from storms, or sought protection from predators. These rituals created a sense of agency in a world largely controlled by nature, offering psychological comfort in the face of uncertainty and danger. The location of cave art was also significant. Deep within caves, far from external threats, communities found a protected, sacred space. Here, they could gather safely to conduct ceremonies, tell stories, and reinforce cultural knowledge. Children could observe and learn, absorbing lessons about the animals they depended on, seasonal cycles, and the importance of cooperation and respect for the environment. In this way, cave art and ritual were educational as well as spiritual. Cave art also reflected observation and respect. Depictions of animals show remarkable detail, accurate proportions, movement, and even injuries, suggesting that early humans studied their environment closely. By documenting what they saw and experienced, they created a visual record that may have guided hunting strategies, seasonal migrations, or community practices. These creations were at once functional, spiritual, and artistic, merging survival with expression. In the story of Ice Age survival, cave art and prayers illustrate the human need to connect with the unseen forces of the natural world. They show that early humans were not merely reacting to their environment, but engaging with it intellectually, emotionally, and spiritually. Art and ritual offered comfort, knowledge, and hope, tools as essential as fire, clothing, and food in navigating a harsh, unpredictable world. Cave art and prayers remind us that survival was a blend of practical skill and cultural insight. In the silence of icy winters and the flicker of firelight, Stone Age people reached beyond immediate survival, seeking meaning, luck, and protection. Their creations endure as a quiet testament to ingenuity, resilience, and the timeless human desire to understand and harmonize with the forces that shape life. In the icy world of Ice Age Europe, survival depended not only on skill and knowledge, but also on understanding the cycles of nature. Stone Age communities often turned to spiritual practices to interpret these rhythms, and totems linked to animals and seasons became powerful symbols of guidance, protection, and connection. These totems reflected the deep observation of the environment and a belief in the interdependence of humans, animals, and the forces of the natural world. Imagine a hunter gazing at a carved figurine or painted symbol, depicting a reindeer, mammoth, or bison. Each animal was not just prey, it was a guide, a spirit, a source of luck and protection. Certain animals represented specific times of year, a mammoth signalling the harsh winter ahead, a reindeer associated with seasonal migrations. By honouring these creatures, communities acknowledged the natural cycles that dictated survival, creating a framework to plan hunts, migrations, and resource gathering. Totems were often carefully crafted from bone, wood, or stone, and decorated with symbolic markings or pigments. They were placed in homes, shelters, or sacred spaces, serving as reminders of the seasons, the behaviours of animals, and the wisdom of ancestors. Some totems were carried on hunting trips or attached to tools and weapons, believed to bring success or safety. The act of creating and maintaining these symbols reinforced focus, intention, and a connection between the spiritual and practical aspects of life. Beyond their practical purpose, totems had social and educational functions. Elders could teach younger members the significance of each animal and its seasonal patterns, passing down knowledge critical for survival. Children learned to recognize tracks, anticipate migrations, and respect the creatures that sustained them. In this way, totems became both spiritual anchors and living tools of education, bridging belief and survival. Totems also reinforced communal identity and cohesion. Shared reverence for particular animals or seasonal symbols fostered cooperation in hunts and migrations. Rituals might involve offerings, dances, or chants to honour these spirits, reinforcing bonds and shared understanding. The spiritual recognition of animals as allies rather than merely resources created a balanced relationship with nature, emphasizing respect, observation, and reciprocity. Importantly, totems reflected adaptability and observation. Different regions and communities developed symbols based on the local fauna and seasonal challenges. A group near a river might venerate fish and waterfowl, while those in open plains focused on reindeer and bison. These variations demonstrate that spiritual practices were intertwined with ecological knowledge, guiding human behaviour and enhancing survival strategies. In the story of Ice Age survival, totems linked to animals and seasons highlight the intricate relationship between humans and the natural world. They reveal an early form of environmental literacy, expressed through art, ritual and symbol. By observing patterns, honouring animal spirits, and aligning their actions with seasonal cycles, Stone Age communities navigated a harsh, frozen landscape with intelligence, patience, and reverence. Totems were more than spiritual objects. They were tools for survival, learning, and social cohesion. They reflect the ingenuity of early humans in combining observation, belief, and cultural practice, ensuring that each season, each hunt, and each journey through the icy world was guided by knowledge, respect, and foresight. In the cold, unpredictable world of Ice Age Europe, fear was a constant companion. Blizzards could appear without warning, predators lurked in the forests, and the hunt could turn deadly in an instant. Stone Age communities responded not only with practical survival skills, but also with rituals designed to ward off fear and danger. These practices offered a sense of control, comfort, and shared purpose, providing both psychological and social support in a harsh environment. Imagine a group gathered around a fire in a cave, the wind howling outside. Elders lead chants or perform gestures meant to protect the community. Small figurines carved from bone or wood may be placed near entrances or beds, thought to ward off predators or bring safety during the night. Such rituals were deeply embedded in daily life, seamlessly combining superstition, observation, and survival strategy. These practices served multiple purposes. Psychologically, they reduced anxiety, allowing people to sleep, conserve energy, and remain alert during dangerous times. Fear, if unchecked, could drain strength, impair judgment, and make survival more difficult. Rituals, whether simple chants, protective symbols, or carefully arranged objects, offered reassurance and a sense of control. In a world dominated by unpredictable forces, even small acts of precaution had a profound impact on morale and resilience. Rituals also reinforced social bonds. Participating together in protective practices created cohesion and mutual trust. Children observed and learned these behaviours, internalizing lessons about vigilance, respect for nature, and the importance of community. In this way, ritual acted as both spiritual practice and educational tool, blending belief with practical knowledge. Animals played a central role in many of these rituals. Totems, carvings, or paintings might represent dangerous predators or essential prey, reminding the community to honour, respect, and sometimes appease these forces. Certain gestures or offerings may have been performed before hunts, or before entering particularly risky terrain, combining spiritual intention with preparation and strategy. The line between superstition and survival was subtle. A ritual might calm the mind while simultaneously focusing attention and reinforcing careful planning. Even small, everyday actions carried ritual significance. Arranging furs in a protective manner, carrying charms, or marking boundaries with symbolic objects could all be ways to guard against misfortune. These practices were adaptive. Over generations, people observed which actions coincided with safety and success, passing down rituals that were meaningful, effective, and culturally significant. In the story of Ice Age survival, rituals to ward off fear and danger reveal the ingenuity of early humans in addressing both physical and psychological challenges. They demonstrate an understanding that survival was not only about tools, clothing, or fire, but also about maintaining mental strength, courage, and cohesion. By combining observation, belief, and communal practice, Stone Age people created strategies that extended beyond the practical into the symbolic. Rituals were quiet yet powerful tools. They transformed fear into focus, isolation into community, and danger into preparation. In the icy landscapes where survival was fragile, these spiritual and cultural practices became as essential as shelter, food, or fire, ensuring that humans could endure, adapt, and navigate a world that was as unpredictable as it was beautiful. In the frozen expanses of Ice Age Europe, survival was rarely tied to a single place. The harsh winters, shifting glaciers, and the migratory patterns of prey demanded adaptability. Stone Age communities mastered the art of seasonal movement, following the rhythms of nature to ensure access to food, shelter, and safety. These migrations were not random wanderings, but carefully planned journeys, reflecting deep knowledge of the land and the behaviour of the animals they depended upon. Imagine a small group preparing to move as the first snows of early winter settle on the plains. The herd of reindeer they had relied upon in autumn has begun its own journey southward. Staying behind would mean starvation. Instead, the group packs their tools, bundles of dried meat and essential supplies, setting out across frozen rivers and snow-covered valleys. Their route is guided by experience, memory, and observation. Knowledge of where herds graze, where rivers remain passable, and where shelters may be found or built. Seasonal movement was both a hunting strategy and a survival mechanism. Following herds ensured a steady supply of meat, hides, and bones, while relocating to milder areas minimized exposure to extreme cold. Communities learned to anticipate seasonal shifts. Spring and summer brought abundant plants, insects, and smaller game, while autumn and winter required long-range hunting expeditions and reliance on stored resources. Each movement reflected a delicate balance between opportunity and risk, optimizing survival across the year. These migrations were often communal undertakings. Groups moved together, pooling knowledge and resources. Elders guided the route, children and young adults observed the landscape, and everyone contributed to carrying supplies and maintaining safety. Moving as a cohesive unit reduced danger from predators, enhanced hunting efficiency, and allowed for mutual support during physically demanding treks through snow and ice. Survival was not merely an individual effort, it was a collective endeavour shaped by shared knowledge and collaboration. Seasonal movement also demanded foresight in preparation. Tools had to be maintained, furs repaired, and preserved food carried along. Temporary shelters might be constructed along the route, offering respite from storms. Hunters and foragers needed to know which areas could provide water, edible plants, or small game. Each migration was a combination of physical endurance and mental planning, a rhythm of life dictated by the natural world. Beyond practicality, seasonal movement shaped social life and culture. Patterns of migration determined meeting points, trade opportunities, and the exchange of knowledge between groups. Stories of routes, animal behaviours, and survival techniques were passed down, ensuring that each new generation could navigate the land as effectively as the last. In this way, movement was not only a survival strategy, but also a medium for education and cultural continuity. In the story of Ice Age survival, seasonal migration represents human adaptability at its finest. It illustrates a profound understanding of ecology, resource management, and social cooperation. By following the herds and the seasons, Stone Age people turned a frozen, challenging environment into a predictable rhythm of life, ensuring that food, warmth, and shelter remained within reach. Seasonal movement was a quiet testament to the intelligence, patience, and resilience of early humans, a strategy that allowed communities to endure harsh winters, exploit opportunities in every season, and maintain the delicate balance between survival and the unpredictable forces of nature. In the frozen and unpredictable landscapes of Ice Age Europe, survival depended not only on following familiar paths, but also on exploring new territories. Stone Age communities understood that resources were not constant. Herds shifted, plants grew in different regions, and weather could render familiar areas inhospitable. Searching for new resources and hunting grounds became a vital strategy, blending curiosity, observation, and courage. Imagine a small group moving through a snow-dusted forest, scouting ahead for signs of life. Tracks in the snow, broken branches, or distant calls of animals signal potential opportunities. Hunters and gatherers alike learn to read these subtle cues, turning every observation into information that could guide their next move. They sought fertile valleys, river crossings, or areas rich in edible plants, while always remaining vigilant for predators or natural hazards. The exploration of new areas was often linked to seasonal needs. As winter intensified, the demand for meat, firewood, and shelter materials grew. Groups ventured farther than usual, following the faint traces of reindeer, bison, or smaller game. At the same time, they searched for hidden sources of water, stashes of berries, or root patches that could supplement their diet. Each journey into unknown territory was both a challenge and an opportunity, a delicate balance between risk and reward. Discovering new hunting grounds required coordination and knowledge sharing. Scouts might move ahead while others prepared temporary shelters or preserved food along the route. Families moved together, ensuring that the weak and the young were protected. When a promising hunting ground was found, the community carefully planned the hunt, using experience to maximize the yield while minimizing danger. In this way, exploration became an organized, purposeful activity rather than a random wander. Resource scouting also shaped human ingenuity. New environments presented new challenges. Unfamiliar terrain, different animals, or varying weather conditions required adaptation. Tools might be modified for the hunt, shelters built from local materials, and food preservation techniques adjusted based on available resources. Every expedition added to the collective, knowledge of the group, enhancing survival strategies for years to come. These explorations fostered social bonds as well. Shared discoveries strengthened trust, encouraged cooperation, and reinforced the community's ability to respond to change. Observing, recording, and remembering the location of resources became part of a subtle oral tradition, a knowledge network that connected generations. This quiet intelligence, an ability to read landscapes, anticipate challenges, and adapt, was as critical as fire, clothing, or shelter. In the story of Ice Age survival, searching for new resources and hunting grounds highlights the ingenuity and resilience of early humans. They were not passive observers of their environment, they actively engaged with it, seeking solutions, opportunities, and ways to endure. Exploration was survival, education, and cultural transmission all in one, a testament to human curiosity, adaptability, and foresight. By venturing into the unknown, Stone Age people transformed a harsh, frozen world into a network of opportunities, ensuring sustenance, safety, and continuity. Their journeys remind us that survival was not only about enduring the cold, but also about understanding and navigating the landscape with patience, skill, and collective intelligence. In the icy expanses of Ice Age Europe, survival was not simply about enduring the cold, it was about anticipating it. Stone Age communities developed a keen understanding of seasonal changes and environmental shifts, realizing that moving to slightly warmer regions could make the difference between life and death. These migrations were carefully planned, guided by knowledge of terrain, climate, and the habits of the animals they depended upon. Imagine a group of hunters and gatherers leaving their familiar campsite as winter deepens. The air bites sharply, frost coats the ground, and the rivers begin to freeze. Resources dwindle, and prey moves southward in search of milder conditions. Staying behind would mean scarcity, an increased risk of illness or starvation. By relocating to areas with slightly more temperate climates, families could access more abundant food, reduce exposure to extreme cold, and find safer, more manageable shelters. Migration was both strategic and adaptive. Slightly warmer regions, valleys protected from harsh winds, riverbanks that did not completely freeze, or southern slopes that caught the winter sun, offered critical advantages. These areas provided access to water, vegetation, and game, while easing the burden on clothing, fires, and shelters. Even a small difference in temperature could increase the chances of survival, reducing frostbite, conserving energy, and allowing daily tasks to be completed more efficiently. These journeys were not casual wanderings. They required preparation, coordination, and foresight. Families carried preserved meat, tools, and furs. Temporary shelters were packed or constructed along the way, and, The group's movements were carefully coordinated to protect children, the elderly, and the weak. Scouts might travel ahead to locate the best paths and resources, ensuring that the community could settle safely in the new area. Every step was guided by experience and observation. Migration also reinforced social bonds. Moving as a cohesive group required communication, trust, and cooperation. Tasks were shared, some focused on navigating, others on carrying supplies, maintaining fire, or scouting game. The collective knowledge of the group, accumulated over years, allowed communities to move with confidence, turning the challenge of relocation into a coordinated and manageable endeavour. Moreover, migration to slightly warmer regions reflected adaptability and intelligence. Stone Age people understood that survival depended not only on hunting and gathering, but also on environmental management. By adjusting their location according to seasonal shifts, they minimised risk and maximised opportunities, demonstrating a sophisticated understanding of the landscape and its resources. In the story of Ice Age survival, these migrations were quiet but essential acts of foresight. They highlight the ability of early humans to read environmental cues, plan for the long term, and respond proactively to changing conditions. Rather than being passive victims of cold, they engaged with their surroundings, seeking the best possible circumstances to endure, thrive, and protect their families. Migration to slightly warmer regions was more than movement. It was a strategy of survival, an expression of human ingenuity, and a testament to adaptability. Through these carefully guided journeys, Stone Age communities ensured access to food, shelter, and safety, the fundamental elements of life, even in a world dominated by ice, wind, and uncertainty.